Hey everyone, I have made a lot of progress on my travel album, so I thought I would do a really quick walkthrough of my progress so far. So this is the album that I'm using to document my recent trip to Eugene, Oregon and San Francisco. I was lucky enough to attend Story Camp, and so I've decided to use the 6x8 album that was provided to us at Story Camp to document this very special trip. This is the album that I actually had Allie sign, so I know that this project will end up being something that I cherish for a really long time. So I've documented the first half of it, which was where I was in Eugene, Oregon, and then later my partner flew out and met me there, and we drove to San Francisco. So I've done the first part of it. I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do on the title page yet. I have a few ideas, but I'm not quite sure yet, and I'm just like not ready to commit to anything, but I'm playing with a few ideas. I'm mostly working out of the main kit. This was the only thing that I got during the travel release because there were so many products in here, and you can definitely make a full album with this kit. I am pulling in some like other pieces, like I think this came from like Week in the Life. I've been pulling in some story kit stuff. Again, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet. I'm still playing around, but I will definitely come back to this soon. So my first picture that I have here for the title page is a 6x8 photo from Story Camp. This was one of my favorites. I just thought the centerpieces looked so beautiful. So put a transparency over that, and that'll be my first photo. Now, I've been taking the travel product play class that Allie offers. I don't believe the registration is closing on this class. I think you can take this at any time. And if you're looking for some extra inspiration on how to document some of your travel memories, I highly recommend this class. It has been so fun to see how Allie used these products, as well as some guest designers who also has some lessons available in the classroom. And so even though they were using the 3x8 albums and I'm obviously using 6x8, it was really easy to take these ideas and adapt them to a little bit of a larger album. But as you can see, I use a variety of page protectors in here. So this was actually, this idea of stamping on a transparency with StazOn ink was one of the lessons in the classroom, and I love the way that looked. And this will actually end up being like kind of a bookmark to indicate that this part of the album or the vacation, I was in Eugene, Oregon, and then I have a later one that says San Francisco, and it just kind of breaks up the album and kind of shows you where I was at during different points of this trip. So I use a variety of page protectors, and I love putting in the 3x8. I love having these, I don't know, I just think it adds like a lot of dimension to have these varying sizes. It also allows to put in a lot of extra storytelling and journaling, because I definitely had a lot of stories to tell for this vacation. So just putting in, just kind of like starting at the beginning of my trip when I arrived. One fun thing that I did, I put in this album, was the packing list. So we had to bring quite a few items to Story Camp, and so I ended up packing all of these things, and I took a selfie in the mirror in the hotel room, which I thought was pretty funny because my bag was like bigger than me. Again, another fun size that I first used in May for Week in the Life, this 3x8 page protector that has the 2x3 slot and then the 3x6, which I think is really fun to play around with. This today's details kind of like itinerary here came from, I think, a Week in the Life kit. So this was really fun to put down what I was doing during the day, what sort of workshops we were in during Story Camp, and what day one really looked like. And then I usually put photos on the back of those. This is a really fun pocket that I put in here. I took my Instax camera on vacation, which I normally do. I think it's a really fun camera to use when you're documenting different travel things. And so I had a bunch of photos specifically from Eugene, some from the photo walk, and then others you know, just from exploring around the city. And so I had all these photos, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with this? So I actually ended up creating a flip book of these photos. So I adhered the photos back to back, and then using washi tape, I was able to kind of fasten them together, leaving a little bit of space in between so it would allow for some movement. And I think that just turned out like really fun. And I put a tab on top and put those in here. Now, I took a lot more photos with my Instax when I was in San Francisco, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to use these yet. I might, end up arranging them on the page somehow. I'm not really sure, but for these photos, it worked really well to create this flip book. I obviously saved a lot of things from Story Camp, little notes that we got, and put those in the pockets. I did a bunch of tags as well, again, adding some extra dimension. This was a fun Go tag. I'm not sure where I got this, but I put an Instax photo on the back. This large tag we ended up getting at Story Camp, but I believe these are in Allie's shop right now, and they're really fun. So what I did, actually when I was returning home from the trip, I made some quick notes, and I used the prompt, I always want to remember. And I made some notes of like some things that I didn't want to forget from this trip, little small details here and there, conversations I had, people I met. And so I jotted those down and ended up typing those out with my typewriter to capture some of those details. And then I put a photo on the back. This photo is one of my favorites from Story Camp. This was the balcony outside of my hotel room. I really like that you can see the hotel name here, which was Inn on the Fifth. And I think it's really cool. I used one of the digital files to put in the location and the date and the story of this adventure. So that was a fun element. I did lots of see-through pockets as well, so putting in transparencies and adding chipboard. And like I said, a lot of these embellishments just came from the main kit that I got. Day 2's details here, so just kind of repeating the same thing. What time I got up, where I went, what I had for breakfast, and then the things that we did during Story Camp, and put a photo on the back there. This is a handout we also got at Story Camp. So probably one of my favorite parts of Story Camp was doing the photo walk. And sitting through Allie's workshop on photography was really inspiring. And she talked specifically about things she looks for when she's taking photographs, so certain lines, colors, textures, patterns, and space. And so when we went on the photo walk, I used this to kind of keep track of the things that I was finding, and later used that to add in some journaling. So I included my photos and talked about, here were the lines that I was looking for, the white space, the self-portrait, the shapes. And then I used this hashtag. So I've been hoarding this. This came in the Numbers story kit from a long time ago. And I thought someday I will have the perfect layout for this. And I found it because the hashtag that we used on Instagram to share these photos and to look at everyone else's was AE Photo Walk. And so I included that here with the hashtag, and I added some stitching on there, and I thought that turned out really nice. I used lots of the Avery index tabs and journaling on there. This was an envelope, this piece here that we actually got with some of our materials, and I loved that it said words plus photos are life. And so I used this, actually, I cut this up, added in these little tabs, and used this as journaling to be able to tell one of the stories about the photos we were taking, and I put a picture of me and Katie on the back there. Certainly one of the trip highlights was going to Voodoo Donut. I first fell in love with these donuts when I went to Portland a few years ago, and Eugene, Oregon has one. So when I went, I actually grabbed an extra bag during one of my visits and used this and stapled this and put it right into my album. So I had some embellishments. I think these came from past Studio Calico kits. This was from the Eat Story kit, and I just stitched those on. And then I had some journaling cards. I think this was a Kelly Perky kit, of course, about donuts. And so it was the story of this donut, and I talked about my favorite one and where I enjoyed it and how delicious it was. Then on the back I put some photos with a paper clip. Here I used a transparency, so this was a page protector that had 2 4x6 photos. I actually trimmed that off, took this transparency and just stitched that on. And again, I just like the see-through elements. I like it. You can see the journaling in the back there. And so just telling some different stories here. This was one of the layouts that I made at StoryCam, so I wanted to include that. And then this is kind of the part 2 of this album where we're going to San Francisco. So this was all of Eugene, and then this is what I'm still working on. So starting with the story of my partner arriving here, us picking up the rental car. I included the map. I like that this includes how many miles we drove from Eugene, Oregon to San Francisco. I like that this shows the route that we took with Highway 1 going down the coast. And then my process is to just kind of like add in like, where are my stories? What stories do I want to tell? So where can I include journaling cards or blank space? So here I'm going to tell the story of when Mark arrives and, him meeting me out in the city and then us picking up our rental car. So again, I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. I'm really still in the early stages of this, but I've started to print a few photos. So I have our road trip photo. And then I did end up printing this really large picture of the coast. So this was from our drive, and I'm going to journal a little bit about this location and how absolutely breathtaking it was to drive down the coast, and how I'm not really used to this being from Nebraska. So that's all I have. Again, journaling about the drive here. You can see that I did create that little extra page protector that says San Francisco. But that's what I have so far. So overall, like, I am loving putting this together. I think travel is one of my favorite things to document. And again, I have felt so inspired by taking the product play class. So if you're interested in that, I would highly recommend checking it out. But once I get San Francisco done, I will give you an update. Thanks for watching.